Dawn spilled across the Wyoming plain like milk poured upon cracked earth, soft and pale, staining the sky in streaks of rose and gold. A stagecoach rattled its weary way into town, the wheels groaning against the stones, the horses snorting clouds of breath that curled upward like spirits from another life. Folks on the boardwalk leaned their elbows over railings, their eyes catching the stranger as if hope and suspicion always arrived together in this forgotten place. And when she stepped down, dress hem brushing the dust, suitcase gripped tight as if it held more than her belongings, whispers already stirred. Clara Mayfield, a name written in letters across a continent, bound for a future she had imagined but did not truly know. He was waiting for her. Harlan Boone, the rancher whose estate spread wide as the horizon itself, whose cattle marked the land with hoof and shadow. He stood apart from the others, shoulders stooped though he was broad, his belly pressing against his vest buttons, his hat tugged low as if to hide. He had dressed himself carefully that morning, polished boots, fresh shirt, but still the heaviness of his body was what people saw first. Clara saw it too, saw his sighs before his eyes, his fumbling attempt at a smile, the tender hope trembling behind it. And in that moment, a sickness of shame moved through her, because her heart recoiled and she despised herself for recoiling. On the porch of his estate, with ranch hands gathered, with the prairie wind carrying every word like gossip, Harlan extended his hand. A simple gesture, a bridge built of ceremony and duty. Clara froze. Her pulse rang in her ears. Her lips trembled, forming words that were sharp as a blade, unmeant yet unpreventable. "I cannot." The words broke like glass. Silence fell. Then, as if the earth itself had shuddered, a rustle of whispers began. Harlan's face darkened, not in anger, but in a wounded pride that weighed heavier than his body. He lowered his hand. She had undone him before his men, before the sky. That night, in the saloon and at the church steps, her name was carried like a curse. Vain, ungrateful, foolish. By morning, the town had already judged her. Clara found shelter with her younger sister, Evelyn, who had arrived months before to work as a seamstress. They shared bread at a small wooden table, silence between them thicker than molasses. Evelyn's eyes were gentle, but Clara could not meet them. In every corner of the town, she felt the weight of stares. At the well, at the store, even the children giggled when she passed. Shame clung to her like a second skin. Nights were worse. When coyotes howled, when the stars burned indifferent above, she would sit by the cracked window, wishing she could dissolve into the plains themselves. It was Evelyn who acted first. She saw Clara's misery, and she saw too the loneliness in Harlan Boone, the way he moved through town like a man resigned to emptiness. Where Clara had turned away, Evelyn stepped forward. She visited the ranch, at first to mend the hands' torn shirts, then to leave small offerings of kindness. Coffee poured into his cup, bread left warm on his table. Harlan noticed her not with hunger but with gratitude, surprised each time by her presence, as though he did not believe kindness could belong to him. Slowly, quietly, something grew. The way he softened his voice when she spoke. The way her hands lingered just a moment longer when passing him a plate. Their bond was not lightning, but ember, slow, steady, patient. Clara watched from afar. At first jealousy pricked at her, bitter and raw. But as days passed, she began to see what she had missed. Evelyn did not look at Harlan's eyes first. She looked at his steadiness, at the way his laughter rolled deep and low, at the small dignity hidden beneath shame. Clara began to understand that she had broken something she was too blind to hold. The town did not make it easy. Gossip swirled like dust devils. Men at the saloon chuckled. Couldn't even keep the bride he ordered. Women on porches muttered, "The younger Mayfield has more sense than the elder." Clara carried those words like stones in her pockets, each one dragging her lower. Yet Evelyn held her head high. She rode beside Harlan through town, not shrinking from the stares. And in time, people's laughter quieted. Respect, tentative and fragile, began to gather around them. Clara, weighed down with guilt, sought to make herself useful. She taught letters to the ranch children in the evenings, planted a widow's garden with her bare hands, stitched torn shawls for neighbors without asking for pay. Slowly, she found a strange comfort in service, in giving without expectation. The loneliness did not vanish, but in the stillness she felt the faint stir of worth, like grass pushing through cracked stone. Meanwhile, Evelyn and Harlan drew closer. Their connection was a language of gestures, his hatband torn, and her needle stitching it as he sat still, watching her hands. A storm breaking across the plains, his arm pulling her close, not in fire, but in steady protection. A lantern flickering between them as shadows played on walls, and their silence full of more truth than any vow. Love came to them not as thunder, but as the slow swelling of the river after rain. The autumn gathering brought them all together. Lanterns swayed on strings, fiddles cried sharp notes, and pies cooled on wooden tables. Clara stood at the edge, her heart racing. She feared the eyes, the whispers, the old wounds of shame. But when Evelyn entered with Harlan beside her, hand resting gently in his, the room did not mock. Instead, silence fell, then nods, soft, almost reverent. The rancher once ridiculed stood tall, not for his wealth nor his girth, but because someone had seen him whole. Clara's throat tightened, watching them. She felt sorrow, yes, but also a release like shackles falling away. She understood at last. Love was not seized by desperation, but grown in the soil of acceptance. As Harlan lifted Evelyn onto the wagon that night, the lantern light gilding them in gold, Clara stood apart, her heart a mixture of ache and gratitude. What she had rejected had not vanished. It had simply found the hands that could cherish it. And though her own path lay uncertain, she felt no bitterness now, only a fragile hope, rising like a star above the plains. The voice of memory lingers. The plains teach us that not all seeds bloom where we cast them. Some we abandon, ashamed, only to watch them flourish in another's keeping. If ever you turn from love out of fear, take heart. Your story is not yet ended. The heart will find its way. Grace often comes in the form of letting go. And so, Clara stood on the porch, lantern flickering in her hand, eyes lifted to the scatter of stars. The night held her gently, whispering of beginnings yet to come.